granted without permits, I don't understand why it's okay.
That temporary CO was granted on the condition essentially that they be here tonight, correct?
Right, and they would.
So it's kind of a moot point. I guess the technical answer to your question is that this comes under the rubric of the enforcement of the code by the code enforcement officer, and sort of where to draw that line of when to enforce is within the discretion of the CEO. So he has the discretion to do what he's done, but that discretion is, they've been notified, that ends without the letter and without getting relief from this board, and they're not here to seek that relief.
So if we, even though this is your responsibility as this code enforcement officer, can we, as a board, recommend to the code enforcement officer that he might want to take a certain kind of action or consider a certain kind of action?
This board can recommend. This board has no authority to direct the code enforcement officer to take any particular action, but it certainly can recommend.
Because I would recommend that we take pull the temporary CFO. I would recommend that.
Well,
And I think you'll get everybody, everybody will be frantic. They'll
I get the sense that they're solidly booked. You know, I tried to, when I wanted to try to book it in June, and you can't.
That doesn't bother that. That's not my problem.
Okay, I just want to, what do we do when Friday night, 10 cars show up, 5 cars show up?
Well, you pull it, if you pull the C of O immediately, you'd have to probably post a notice and tell the sheriff, and this building is not fit for occupancy. And if 10 cars show up day after tomorrow, the sheriff, you inform the sheriff, and the sheriff.
I don't know that the sheriff is going to enforce our zoning law. I think then that this board has to decide whether it wants Peter and me to schlep off to town court, which only has the ability to fine, or to schlep off to Supreme Court, which has the ability to issue an injunction prohibiting further use of that structure.
I feel very strongly about
And I want to add that I think that the fact that they've been cut slack and they've been offered the opportunity to get more relief, but haven't chosen to take advantage of that, will show the Supreme Court, if we go to that court, that we have tried to accommodate. We've been over backwards to try to ease that property into the new local law.
Is there anything in writing that requesting her to show up at the meeting tonight? I mean, if I'm a judge, I'm going to want to see some sort of written record.
I mean, I think if you took a look at the minutes from the zoning board meeting, which was last Monday, which they were here for the zoning board meeting, it was very clear at that meeting that the zoning board would say no, and then they would come to the next village board meeting tonight to get approval from the village board. That's how she viewed it, that the village board would let them, because it's not owner occupied, give them relief. And
Was there some confusion with all the terms that the zoning board was coming up with? Did they think that that was permission if they
The
did those
zoning
things?
board didn't take any, they just said it's illegal, you can't do this.
Okay.
And if you, the understanding is, we don't know, and they said, we have no idea what the village board is gonna say, but you have to go to the village board to ask for relief.
And then you were, that list, the $2 million policy.
No.
What were
2 months later, the planning board met.
That was the plan.
And the planning board, one of the members of the planning board lives right there, and said, you know, we passed a 90-foot setback rule, and that was just blown out of the water. What happened here? How did these people get away with this? Why did they don't seem to respond, they didn't ask permission for anything. I said they put a bathroom in, they did all this electrical work without any building permits, so they said,
I
we
think
have to stop this guy.
there are two things going on with respect to the bocce ball court and patio and so forth and the bridge. The 90-foot setback is something that's referred to in the comprehensive plan, but it is not required by our zoning. That's my understanding.
Right.
So that,
We-
but the bridge is a permanent structure and no building permit was applied for. So that appears to me to be a clear violation.
We feel like the bridge is on, I don't know whose property, that Pinnacle property or state property? It's not on village property.
Was
It's a
it
state-
built,
it's a
was it
state
built within
highway.
the village?
No, it
I mean,
was,
the village extends into the lake,
Yeah,
whether it's county property, state property, or personal property.
So they built a permanent structure without a permit on village property.
Or property within the village.
So there's a laundry list of problems already.
right, I mean, all the electrical work that they did, all the plumbing that they did, all that was put out of the way.
But
Have
what
they-
I was trying to get at was when the list that you were saying that were possibilities for them, the $2 million policy, the this, the that, were
Well, they were just recommending,
from home.
from the planning board. The planning board said,
Planning board.
this guy doesn't want to listen to me. He just does what he wants. You should have some demands on this guy. He obviously doesn't ask permission. He just,
So those are recommendations by the planning board to the village board, but they have not previously been shared with the applicant.
no,
That was my question.
no, they are not.
is it your feeling that they've been acting in good faith
No.
in terms of being responsive and,
I don't, here's what,
I don't mean good faith in doing all this stuff without letting anybody know. Since you have been talking to them, have they been stonewalling
Up to
or
now, Up to
obfuscating?
now, they've been acting in good faith. I got a phone call last Thursday from their attorney, it was a Friday, saying, Peter, I'm having trouble getting you that letter with the engineer's sign off. And we have the place booked this weekend. So I said, I'm gonna give you a temporary C of O until I get that letter in my hand from your engineer. And this will get me, this gets resolved at the next village board meeting. So the temporary C of O is good until tonight.
And then they don't have one.
They have no C of O.
No, was that in writing?
I actually got the letter.
No, I saw the letter, but
Yeah.
I don't recall it saying the COO would terminate tonight.
I'm not sure exactly what it says. So,
I would be inclined to give them 2 more weeks and then play hardball
2 weeks to do what? What do they have to do within 2 weeks?
to
Deliver the letter.
deliver the letter, and after that, I would have no problem.
I think it should be issued to them in writing, though.
Absolutely in writing. That's why I'm emphasizing this,
Does that
because
mean that you are planning for this board to meet in 2 weeks? To consider an application?
2 weeks. When is the next?
Because there were, as I understand it, that temporary certificate of occupancy was based upon getting the letter and upon appearing before this board to seek relief.
I meant the next meeting. When's the next meeting?
I thought it was the 7th.
It's a month from now.
Well, the workshop's on the 7th.
7th?
3 weeks from
On the workshop, sometimes it meets and
3 weeks.
sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
But the letter is, that's not the only thing that's the issue. It's not like they get a CMO just if they give you the letter that the bathroom is okay. Well, there's a lot of other things to discuss. Like the whole thing is not,
We don't even know the owner, and
It's against
all
the
of
law.
a sudden you're supposed to know
We
the
don't
owner.
know the owner, his name and his address and his telephone number.
Idiot.
I don't know how many, we said, how many people can stay there? I have nothing in writing that says they can have 15 people staying there. I don't know, you know, how do we know? Do we tell them you can only have a certain number? No, we did not. How many people can I have as guests? Can I have 10 people stay there or 20 guests? Which they have done, you know, what do we do about that?
Well, this board, if it decides it's going to grant relief, outlines what that relief is. Put reasonable conditions and reasonable limitations on that, and a period of time for which that relief is going to last with a maximum of 18 months. But there's nobody here.
Right.
And it does, if it meets the definition of short-term rental, within a short-term rental can only have 2 adults in a room. Correct. In a bedroom. Right. So.
I think there was it.
They have 4 bedrooms, let's say, the downstairs is a bedroom. So it's
That's
a-
got 3
it's a
Murphy, queen-size Murphy beds.
Right, and ping pong tables and fridge bowl tables, and it's a party room.
Right.
With 3 beds in it,
But it's one bedroom,
but it's one bed.
okay, and then you got 2 upstairs,
3 more bedrooms upstairs.
upstairs, so you have 4, so the most you could have is 80 people, 80 adults.
Who's counting?
I don't even know why we were going this far.
You're right.
But as far as I'm concerned, I'd say, take it to Supreme Court, go down there and nail something to the front door, and say this is an illegal, building, and give them a date to come to Supreme Court.
But Tom, what would the timeline on that be? Or would you recommend going to town court and,
Why? Just so they can get fined.
well, we get the fines, don't we? And they double every 30 days if they're not paid?
So what's the,
Well, let me respond to that. It's expensive to go to Supreme Court. My recommendation is that if they do not close, that we cite them on a daily basis for every violation. Now, when we had problems with noise at the Blue
mill.
Mill,
Yeah.
we got a fine that was this big, then we got a fine that was this big, and then we were going back for a larger fine, and that's when
We got his
basically
attention.
we all got real with each other, and the problem, for all intents and purposes, went away. And I think here, you know, we get a fine, and the judge is gonna slap on the wrist, and maybe slap on the wrist a second time, but the third time, the fourth time, and the fifth time, I think those fines will become significant.
But that, we could be talking about a year. It's I mean, Wayne pushed off going to court for 6 months. He just didn't show up. And the judge was very lenient, okay, do it next time. So,
and this guy's in the same league.
yeah,
Of expertise.
so we could be talking about a year. And then he'll leave the file, say, give me the file, you know, I made my money, I'll pay it.
Do you think we should go straight to Supreme Court?
I would.
Now, when you say expensive, what are we talking?
It's not terribly expensive. You know, we're talking about a couple $1,000s to get in there with our pleadings and to serve them and to commence the action and to get a judge assigned. But then the question is, how enthusiastically do they defend the suit? And these short-term rental legal decisions that are out there, and there are already a crop of them, have indicated that municipalities have not always had a clear run in doing what they want to do. The courts have they've sided with the short-term renters or rental owners on a significant number of occasions. I think we are in a good position. We passed our local law before we took action, and a lot of the cases where the municipalities have lost, they've gone in, they've tried to shoehorn what they want to do into the existing zoning laws. So we specifically tried not to do that. I think we've done a good job. I think we've done an honest job. We've put everybody on notice. I take affirmative steps to call Noel before meetings and so forth, to let her know they were occurring and so forth. I don't think they have any complaint that there was a lack of notice. But I can presume that we'll get a vigorous defense. So I think we're probably talking about a $7,000 to $10,000 project by the time we're done, and that's only a wild guess.
Tom, could I ask you a question? According to our zoning or our code, village code, that this is an RV2, 1 or 2 family. You can have a B&B, or we didn't even say Airbnb, but it requires a special use permit for anything other than a 1 or 2 family house. You have to get a special use permit. And so that's why I would use it to say they need a special use permit to operate. In,
They do. They have.
Right. And they don't have a special use permit. I thought that was what we were in the process of trying to see. Are we going to grant them a special use permit?
And I think they're going to have a hard time showing that they were entitled to one when it's not owner occupied. And when they had a relief valve, which is coming to this board, to ask for, to be cut some slack. And this is the board that passed that law, so, I think we can presume that the board is not unwilling to make a, to listen and to grant some kind of relief. But if they haven't asked for it, and they've been denied a special use permit, I don't think they have a complaint.
And the special use permit is short term. If that guy's, if no one is ever, if there's never going to be owner occupied, then it's only this 18-month period where we're trying to help you out because you made this investment, but you still can't do it.
But I don't think the village ever issued a special use permit so far. We haven't done it.
No, we haven't done it, but we have laws saying how to do it.
Right.
And in order to get one, it's still, to be a short-term rental, you still have to be owner occupied 6 months of the year.
Correct.
So it's not.
Right.
Or a year from now, or 6 months from now, well, no, but it's not. But they're not even trying. We were clear, we did it before anybody started this, and then now they're just doing it.
Right.
So-
Not only are they doing it, they're doing exactly what they want.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're just doing exactly what they want, and I think we have to be very strong about, I think that's a pretty flagrant,
What I fear is, so we go to Supreme Court, they'll still be operating unimpeded for a year until things get resolved. And that,
Well, if we go to Supreme Court and they continue to operate, then we're going to seek an injunction.
what kind of time frame is that?
An injunction is, we're talking maybe 2 months to get a decision. It's up to the court, but I mean, we can, a request for an injunction is simply, once you start your lawsuit, you make a motion. You ask the court on 21 days' notice is what I usually give, to provide us with a temporary injunction. And, we have to meet various factors like the likelihood that we'll succeed on the merits, the fact that there's no substitute for an injunction because it's not something that money damages can make us whole with, because we're talking about compliance with the law and not having 10 cars parked out front of the neighbors' houses. And I believe that we have grounds to seek an injunction and would probably have a relatively good chance of obtaining one from the court.
Is there any reason you can't do both? Town court for fines and state Supreme Court for an injunction?
For the same violation of law? We can seek fines in Supreme Court. So I would wrap it all up into one court. I don't know how the judges would look at going to 2 different courts for two different types of relief for the same violation of law. So let's go to Supreme Court and request both types of relief.
I do think that we need to address this strongly and immediately. I think there's going to be very definitely months where that's going on, and, 6 months maybe to get this straightened out, but it's setting a precedent, and it's just so flagrant, like I said. I'm just kind of stunned that they've talked with us and they couldn't care less, and it's a huge place and there are a lot of cars, and I think we have to address it immediately.
So what Peter and I would need in order to do that would be to have someone move a resolution to commence an action in New York State Supreme Court, Saratoga County, to seek enforcement of our zoning code as recently amended.
Well, when was it amended? Not recently.
And to seek an injunction if the violations continue. And that would come with a price tag that you have filing fees, you have legal fees, I don't know, whatever we had for the water project as a per hour fee, that would be the per hour fee that my office charges. And we would have to have that authorization in order to do that. Otherwise, we'll simply go to town court and seek fines.
I so moved.
Second.
Discussion?
So, I'm sorry. So do we want to give them the last opportunity on the letter to say, you need to come before the board, you need to submit your letter, your CFO before they do that, or are we gonna do both at the same time?
I don't think the letter is enough based on what they're doing down there. I don't think the fact that the electrical work in the bathroom is in good shape is enough to.
I think I would need to revoke their CMO.
I agree.
So,
And I think that puts him in trouble with his insurance. If there's no, I think they're concerned about that, having a valid CMO. Their attorney is concerned. They need to have a.
I'm sure they're worried about their liability for the actions taken.
So if we revoke their CMO, I don't know if they'll use it. I really don't know. She was called me last Thursday or Friday and said, we have the place booked. I can't get the engineer to write this letter. What am I gonna do? And I said, okay, I'll give you a temporary CMO if you're in the process of getting me this letter. I'm okay with it.
Well, the letter, as Heidi says, the letter is only addressing one thing. There's a
Right.
myriad of problems associated with the place
I'm
already.
not involved with I said, I don't know what the conditions are. Does the board have conditions saying that you're only allowed so many cars, or you're only allowed so many people? I don't know what those numbers are.
I play hardball. I'd go to Supreme Court and I'd revoke this CMO.
We do have things in the law that says that there can only be 2 adults in a bedroom. And it also says it must be owner occupied 6 months of the year.
But if you don't say that, you can have 15 guests there for the afternoon.
No, but-
20 cars.
No, we don't say that.
We should, I think we should.
But
say
there
that.
is but the owner does not live there. And
Right.
there are, who's sleeping there and who's just coming to
Who
hang
do
out?
we contact when, like the story I read in the paper, the guy at the Airbnb stabs the other guy in the back? I just read it a couple days ago.
Don't call me.
I don't know, we know what the owner is technically, but.
Now, if you have a problem with 7 and you go to see Tom Bergen and Cecily Mann.
Right.
You get a problem on lot 11 Ames, you don't even know who to talk to.
It would be no different if we went there for a call. We wouldn't be able to contact the homeowner.
So, I don't know.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table, but I need a little clarification.
And
You had talked about 2 weeks, you mentioned 2 weeks. I don't think that was an actual proposal, but it's something we discussed. I kind of need to know, are Peter and I authorized to go ahead if he takes a C of O and they've got people there immediately thereafter? Or are we going to contact their attorney, Noel Long, and say, we're giving you another bite at the apple 2 weeks from now, to come before the board? Just, I'm not
I don't know.
making a recommendation, I'm just asking so that I know.
There was the 2 meetings, I'm just trying to follow all of this. There was this zoning appeal. And so she understood they needed to have that letter from the engineer. And
Yes.
so, but it was not in writing that if they didn't present it here tonight, that you were gonna revoke the C of O, temporary one, correct?
Can you get your letter?
Yeah.
I think so. Basically, I'm just saying, they're told they have to present by a certain date that letter to continue their C of O, because if they don't, he revokes it, they're in trouble with their insurance. That's gonna be more of a penalty to them than any of this for immediate purposes. And then if they still don't, then we proceed with this.
Well, I think what Peter's addressing is it has, this one, F says that it has to meet all codes and that he has to inspect it. I mean, there's plenty of other things too, and maybe they don't carry the weight of that, but they're not meeting any of the rest of them.
Which is why the ZBA said, you do not qualify.
Right, you're illegal. The ZBA already said that.
Yes, and it wasn't, there are some factors the ZBA can consider with a special use permit. It never got there, because they don't even qualify.
No. So,
I'll let you read it.
Glasses, please.
Want me to read it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got glasses. This is to Noel and Long, the attorney, Capital District Ventures LLC, 11 Ames Avenue. Well, as you know, construction work was completed at 11 Ames Avenue without a building permit. Based on your active efforts to bring building code violations into compliance, this letter constitutes a temporary certificate of occupancy expiring 30 days from issuance. If I have not received a letter from a licensed engineer that the plumbing and electrical service in and to the house meets New York State code, this temporary certificate of occupancy will expire by its own terms and without further notice. Furthermore, in order to continue its current use, Capital District Ventures must obtain temporary relief from the Round Lake Village Board of Trustees, before which I believe an application is pending. If that relief is not granted, or any conditions issued by the board not met, a certificate of occupancy will not be issued for the building's current use beyond the date of the temporary certificate. And that was
what's the
June
30th?
14th.
June 14th.
Okay.
Things in there,
But it's July, it's for 30 days.
right, but the deadline is in there, so.
Right. But I think I understand what you were doing here, but it's more than that. It's more, they are not, they can't do it the way they're doing it. They just can't.
Mike, I would agree, but I couldn't address that. Say,
Right.
You had too many cars there, the garbage cans filled with beer cans.
Yeah, but the owner doesn't live there 6 months of the year. And there isn't adequate parking, which is one of the specifications in the law, adequate off-street parking. And only 2 people in, 2
And there were no
buildings.
better building permits.
And you have to do all this ahead of time. You have to inform all the neighbors that you're applying for a special use permit. I don't think that
Yeah, I
happened.
don't think we did that. They wrote a letter, they did. She wrote a letter to the neighbors, telling the neighbors what she's doing. It never came from the village. I mean, we didn't notify anybody.
I would have given 2 minutes. I just have you and Tom sit down as soon as humanly possible and prepare the paperwork to go to State Supreme Court. and I take their CO.
I mean, I have no problem in calling Noel tomorrow and telling her that because she didn't show up tonight, that her.
Well, that
That letter says 30 days.
letter says otherwise. That letter says 30 days.
But that letter is only one of 10
Right.
things.
Right, they still need to come to the village for the special use permit.
Which they don't have.
But in his letter, he says, if you don't do that, I will also yank your CO.
They're ineligible for a special use permit, and the only way they can continue to operate in any way, shape, or form, other than as single-family residence, or a long-term rental, is to come before this board, and this board has retained for itself the authority to tell them what they can do with that property over a period of 18 months. And the board can simply say, no, you're just too far out of whack to provide relief to, or the board can say you can rent 1 room or 2 rooms, or you can only have 1 car or 2 cars or 3 cars, or whatever this board wants to do. But that's the only way they're gonna get relief. But it seems to me that there's a motion for a resolution on the table, and I think this board, if it's going to approve that resolution, has to state that that is effective on the 30th day after this letter.
Right, I agree. So do we need to amend that resolution?
We didn't vote yet, so you can change it.
Okay.
So how do we amend it to say what?
Kim's gonna read it back.
Resolution to be moved to seek enforcement of our zoning code as recently amended and to seek an injunction in violation if the violation continues past July 14th.
Yeah, I don't know that it needs to say recently amended, they're in violation of our building code. It doesn't matter.
Well, the
what it
short-term
is.
rental that we,
It's in violation of our building code. When we amended it, is of no consequence. It was amended before they did
Not
this.
our building code or zoning law.
Zoning, excuse me. So, but I don't know that we need to say recently, it's just that it's in violation. Okay. I just think that's right.
So we're giving them 30 days?
We have to.
already put it in writing.
But we're on that one issue.
Right, but I think that shows us we're sticking by things, we're now getting very serious, we are putting it in writing, and we are saying that we are gonna take this to court. Because there are many issues here, but, I think it needs to be clear that there are many issues, not just those. And they have to come before the board. Alan says that in the letter.
But if you were their lawyer, might you interpret that letter as to mean if we just resolve this via a engineer's report?
No,
No, okay, you wouldn't interpret it. All right, okay.
It also specifically mentions coming before the board.
Yeah, all right. Now, this has nothing to do with the CFO. This resolution. Okay,
shall I do it again?
Please.
Tom Peters needs a resolution to be moved to seek enforcement of our zoning laws and to seek an injunction if violation continues past July 14th, and we'll fill in some blanks with words, but that is the meat of it.
I mean, the reality is they need a special use permit to operate.
except during the 18-month period if this board
Granted that.
grants that.
okay, so on this
But
issue.
right now, they don't have a special use permit.
So if we just vote on this issue, we're only dealing with this one particular thing, and they would have to come before the board. And regarding that one particular issue, have to come before the board. If we set that aside, we vote one way or the other, set it aside, can then somebody else make a motion regarding the special use permit and the fact that it's illegal?
No,
Nobody needs a
this
motion.
resolution is saying we're taking them to court to enforce this.
This authorizes Peter and me and Gary to commence a legal action to enforce our zoning code against this owner, Capitalistic Ventures LLC, after the expiration of the temporary CO outlined in Peter's letter.
So they're legal until the 14th of July unless they come to us and we make other arrangements.
Unless they get relief from this board.
Okay.
And provide that engineer's letter.
I like to shut them down, but I understand.
So we're stating that it's Capital District Ventures LLC and also that it's 11 Ames Avenue in there. I would say.
Yeah.
Is that in there? Is that
In
part of it?
the- Yeah, we'll write it. We'll draft a resolution to it.
Yes.
Are we voting for it now? Are we voting
I'm
now?
just waiting, yeah.
I'm finished.
Do you want to talk about
Yeah.
it?
No.
Yes.
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 And I see no reason to keep anybody from knowing that we're authorized to charge off the clerk. That might be inspiration to get themselves into gear.
You said you want me to call her tomorrow?
No, I'm not suggesting you call her, but I'm not, you know.
I can't believe she blew us up.
I can. I mean, all the others do.
Yeah, no, what?
Make business people.
I didn't have it, I'm sure that helps.
Got a question for you. In Griffin's Ridge, the no-cut zone, is that owned by the HOA?
Yes,
It is, okay.
yeah.
The HOA, not the individual homeowners?
Oh, yeah, it's owned by the individual homeowner, I'm sorry, right. The no cut, at the 10 feet on the back. It's not on every, I don't understand if it's on everybody's property or not. It's, I'd have to look at the plans to see. I would imagine the homes that back up to each other, like, on the north and south loop, that there's no trees, there's nothing.
I'm
there.
talking about along the Zim Smith.
Along the Zim, yeah. And along, I think,
Pat Randall's farm.
yeah, there's a note,
Yeah.
that's it. I think those are the only two areas.
Okay, thank you.
And I also, I took a look at Washington Avenue. And my guess is it looks like Jim Finkel's trailer filled with debris. And I did see somebody was cutting back behind Mancini's house.
Mangino.
No, was
What's
it?
her name?
Mangino.
Mangino. It looks like, and it's like I'm saying, they're taking brush out. They're insane. You live at the bottom of a hill. The last thing you want to do is clear in there because you're going to get flooded.
But I know there's village land that goes
It's
up
all
there.
village land back there.
I know, but who's clearing, somebody's clearing village land?
That's what it appears to look like. I mean, I was going to check with Jim.
They shouldn't be doing that, because it'll cause erosion.
Yeah, it's going to come right down.
Have you seen it, John?
I barely drive the road. I can take a ride by, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. go
It's
ahead.
it's in Jim's trailer, which I said, he's got.
In Jim's what?
Back, Finkel's trailer. And Jim has that little backhoe, I say, it's not his property. It's village property, but it's not even behind his house. It's really behind his neighbor's house.
If it's village property, nobody should be clearing it.
Right.
Post it to trespassing and then call the sheriff if somebody trespasses.
I'll talk to Jim.
Good luck.
No, I also have a good relationship with Jim. I don't know, for some reason I thought, I don't think it's him doing it. I mean, he can't actually hop into that piece of machinery and operate it. I mean, it's not something.
Alrighty, auditorium AP3.
Hello. We had a lovely celebration last weekend to dedicate cut the ribbon on our seats. You missed it, Matt did a masterful job as deputy mayor. Tom was right there at his side.
Tina was there with the dog.
I didn't know she was official, sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, I sent a message to the board on two issues. One is with respect to the master plan, I'd like to keep moving on that, and I didn't know how the board would like to proceed. I offered a couple of options, forming a committee to look at the plan, make recommendations, present the recommendations, pursue funding. I could see this as a multi-year project. So I suggested 3 options. I don't know if you have an opinion about any of them.
Did you see Amy's email?
Sorry?
Did you see Amy's follow-up email?
I did not intend to copy the board and the mayor. She apologized. Oh, okay. I don't know quite what she
But I
meant.
understood, well, I think she thought that, you know, the master plan, if I may speak for her, that the master plan originated, the AP3 was gonna work on that, and we were doing our part, but couldn't it be pursued within AP3 before it even comes to the board? We're gonna parse the details and then.
I wrote back to her that I thought this was the board's plan and the board's property, and we needed to get guidance from the board on how to proceed. All I'm proposing, I'm not proposing any particular course of action, just some structure for looking at the master plan, and if we do move forward, making suggestions on what to do and what not to do. I just don't want it to languish after we spent so much time and money on it. And I was also confused about, I can't remember her exact language, but I sent her a message back saying I didn't understand her language. Anyway, it's something along, we don't even know what we want yet. That what we want isn't really the point.
Or maybe the village we, because the survey hasn't gone out or something like that. I
Well,
don't-
the survey is a separate thing.
Right.
The survey is about programming,
Oh,
only about programming.
okay, sorry, take that back.
So,
Well, my thoughts with these, I'll just say that I think that there's still a lot of work to be done as far as we have a master plan, what are we gonna do with it, what are the options? I would be very happy to have AP3 take a good look at this and continue with it. I'd be happy to, as the auditorium board liaison, to be part of that, but if they're willing to spend that time and level of detail, I would be happy to have that. What are you thinking, Gary?
I'm very impressed with the AP3 board, and I think it's got a very good cross-section of residents.
and let me point out, it wouldn't have to be limited to 83, that there's, you know, you can put the word out.
Other
somebody
people who are
doesn't want to be on
interested.
83 but is interested in this project. I think that would be good.
Yeah, I don't wanna close it in, but
No, no, no.
I don't wanna go, okay, board, what are you gonna do now? Because I don't think we've got the people to do it, and if there's an interest in AP3, as you said, good cross-section.
Well, my thinking was, aside from the fact that you have plenty of other things on your plate, this is going to be a multi-year project, and I think it needs continuity, so. And, you know, I know you guys have, you know, staying power and all.
Yeah, well, other than you're impressed with the board, what else are you thinking?
Well, are there any board members that are interested in working on it, along with the committee?
Well, like
You
I said, as the board liaison, I think that they would at least keep me involved. Yes, I can be.
And it could also be that different phases, you know, we have an initial phase, looking through the report in great detail, breaking it down. I'm thinking of Tina's work on the triage for the Clark House. You did a really good job, as I recall, of listing out projects and priorities and all that. So you might not be that interested in this phase, but that phase might appeal to you. You could come in and out. I'm not asking you to commit right now, I'm just using you as an example.
I just don't know if I can put any more on my plate right now.
I know, I'm just saying,
What was
keep
that?
your hand in.
I just don't know if I can fit any more on my plate
No,
right
no,
now.
no, no, I know. See, that's the point. You are all very busy.
Well, I guess I have a question. I mean, the gentleman, I forget his name, had presented where he laid out it almost sounded like a 5-year plan of, what needed to be done on the interior, what needed to be done on the exterior. Are you looking for the committee to kind of go look at his recommendations and see where we feel comfortable moving forward?
That's pretty much exactly it. And there's so many different parts to it, like there's the structural things, the more or less maintenance things, like the bell tower, and then there's the overall vision. He had some pretty elaborate suggestions, which seem really hard to imagine implementing right now, but maybe as we work through it and and there would need to be a terrific amount of buy-in to some of these concepts that would have to be a component of this work. I think if we do proceed in many of those directions. So.
And he did, Mark Thaler, Mark, he sounded fairly positive about funding opportunities, about grants, but that's gonna take some work.
Well, he was actually here this weekend and he asked if we had done any of the consolidated funding grants. And I said, no, and I didn't plan to because I think we need to have a really clear idea of the direction we're headed in and what our priorities are because it's quite an involved process. Gary knows this very well. But with the master plan and the landmark designation, we're very well positioned to get some of this funding. But I think it would be a waste of time and possibly counterproductive to go after funding without having a very clear idea of what we ultimately want to happen.
He's still waiting for the answer on the grant that you submitted back 6 weeks ago. He said in the next couple of weeks, there should be an answer on that. And then he was talking about the consolidated funding grant was the one that was due at the end of this July.
Yeah, July's the deadline, but it's for all of the state agencies. It's it's a gateway to funding new grants from all different agencies. So we could be eligible from, of course, Parks, Recreation, SHPO, that kind of thing, but also the Council on the Arts and, but we don't want to go to the Council on the Arts until we're like, we want this to be this kind of space, so we need this kind of money to build this kind of thing. We don't even know what that is, so.
Right, okay, that makes sense to me. So could we suggest that AP3 figure out a plan of what to do with the master plan?
Master plan for the master plan?
Next steps?
Or at least next steps.
Next steps.
Prioritize, come up with the top 3 or something like that, that as a board, we can then pursue or help
Oh yeah, I would
pursue.
think we would do lots of updates. Tell you that we met and talked about this, that, and the other. And I also think that, say we wanted, one of the things that I would like to do is move the concession stand away from where it is now, and possibly in the back, because it's very intrusive there, blocks the entrance. And likewise, the bathrooms, you can't use the bathroom without disrupting the performance. It's just really, but that's a pretty big project, and it's gonna take a lot of planning. And we're probably going to need a lot of buy-in because, how this village is about any little change. It just, somebody came in and saw the chairs and said, why did they take out the old ones? So
It looked
that seemed a pretty easy one to me. So, if nothing is going to move quickly, it's just going to be, I think, a very deliberative process. And, the whole idea he has about wrapping the front of it and building, that's like really a long way away with a lot of clients. So I don't envision any quick action, just like discussion about, all right, if we get the next grant, and we get the next report, that should identify some specific things. But, I mean, there's just so many possible projects, and how to get a handle on them, and how to do them in what order, and how to pay them. And I just think it needs a lot of ongoing evaluation and thought.
And you certainly don't want to be doing one thing that down the road, you're gonna have to undo
Exactly.
to
Well,
do
this was
something
the
more
issue
important.
with the grant, that we ended up using, with AV equipment and chairs, because we were trying to find a project to do, we can't do that, or we can't do that, or that'll impact that, or that, and we don't know about that. I mean, we did that for a year.
Yeah, you saw what had drawn out process
That
out.
chair project took between 5 and 6 years.
I mean, okay, you're right, things have been more than a year, but I know that we couldn't even figure out what to do with the grant that we had been given.
But I think Mark, in his master plan, he weighted things, okay, this would happen first, because then everything that happened after
Right.
wouldn't have to undo the first thing.
Right.
It happened in the sequence that made sense for, the structure itself. And I think that first grant that you did is to determine, it was for, foundation, was it foundation? No, it was overall structural report, I think it was for a structural report.
Yes.
I do,
Yeah,
it was a
because
structural.
take a look and see what, where the problems lie. Okay, but can we just, so what should we do here? Can we, if there's a group of people that would like to continue this, and Kim is tired after getting those chairs in, should we authorize them to look into, what is it? Authorizing to look into next steps, prioritizing, what do you want to say?
I guess I would like to, have the board's blessing to form a committee to, evaluate the master plan and update the board, frequently with our opinions, and
Specific suggestions as to how to implement that master
Sorry?
plan? Specific suggestions as to how to implement that master plan.
right, yeah.
Was that your motion?
Yeah, do we need to, we're authorizing a
Do
committee?
we need a motion?
Yes, the only way this board can do anything is through resolutions. So if you're gonna move a resolution,
All right, so
authorizing that to be done or requesting that to be done.
AP3 to form and oversee a committee to
Evaluate
Specific
this.
evaluate the master
suggestions.
plan and make specific suggestions
To implement it.
to implement it
And report to the board.
and report to the board.
So I'd be interested in, anyone who wants to work on this, but I don't want it to be a huge group. But I don't know the best way to get that word out, maybe that's a very email.
Do we have a second discussion?
So we're going to decide the size of this, or are you going to be involved in deciding?
Is this part of the discussion?
This is part of the
Okay.
discussion. Yeah. Wants to decide the size of this. Or are you going to, if we're going to authorize the AP3 to oversee a committee, then can you and Gary talk about
How to select.
how to implement, how to create it and advertise?
I'm interested in anyone who wants to make a commitment, but I don't know quite how to get the word out, so. that you can do
So
that.
we could just leave that, as that,
Work that out. Should we vote? Tom?
Yes.
yes, yes.
Yes.
What's it called now? The committee to what?
The committee to re-elect.
I'm on another board where there was a committee on committees that did a lot of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Auditorium survey, did you want to?
Yeah, the other thing is the survey that, I don't know if any of you took a look at that, focus pretty much entirely on the performance and programming that will go on in the auditorium. Adrian is really eager to get this out there so it can help guide her in booking the space. And we asked about things like, what are your concerns? Well, we try not to use so many concerns, but, you know, how does it work best for you? What size crowds do you like? What, you know, what would you like to see there? That kind of thing. So, as I
Did we
said,
get a final draft on that?
I sent a link.
No.
So the idea is that we asked Gary to use his email list to send out the link. We put up a few posters, and we have a couple of AP3 people who are willing to actually knock on doors for people that we know aren't likely to use the internet. So we want a pretty comprehensive idea of how primarily the village residents would like to see the space used.
What's your timeline for launch?
We want the survey to be live for 2 weeks, so it's ready to go, I think. Just tell me when you think you would be able to send out the message. And I can tell you we'd like the message to say.
Will that be part of your newsletter?
Yeah. Just, I'll wait a day or so to get any feedback from board members. Take a look at it if you have any concerns or.
Are you talking about the survey? The one question, what size crowd would you consider ideal for this space? I mean, for me, you want some things to be small and some things to be large, and
So there's a place to make comments.
yeah, I don't know about that question.
But for example, Adrian had somebody coming in with a proposal to do a Pink Floyd tribute. And she was like, no. That might be too big, too loud, too much. But there's other things that,
Now, would this survey just go out to village residents, or were you thinking like?
the first question you have to, is the only required question is, are you a village resident? So non-village residents can answer it, but we are more interested in what village residents think. On the other hand, we would like to know how people hear about it, so we would take an answer from anyone, but the real focus is what the village residents think and what they want to see, because it's, you know, in their backyard.
Okay, so in the next day or so, give me any, say, is it good to go? Is it, any feedback?
Give it a try, it's fine, I'm fine with it as is, if you want to put it out there.
The survey looks good, I'm just wondering about how far spread, because if part of it is to get events that people are gonna come to outside of the village, you know, do we wanna put it on the exit 11, 10 and 11, and the Country Knolls Facebook page for the survey as well? You know, are you really interested in how the people who are going to be attending, or the residents who have to live with the auditorium in the presence?
My idea was what do village residents want? It is a building owned and operated by the village, and what does the village want to do with it? Because if everybody in the village hates
Then they're
that we
Pink Floyd
use,
tribute.
right,
We won't book it.
then we need to really reconsider what we're doing.
So everybody outside of the village, it's like, if you see an event that you might want to do, that's fine, but as far as how it's going to be used, that's really up to the village.
Yes, not that we would never let people in, but we would say,
Right,
this is how we're going to market this and use this, and then everyone is welcome to it, but we're not taking their view into consideration, because these are the people that need to live with it and pay for it and support it.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so at 8:20, we're done with the reports.
Sorry.
And moving on to old business, there's a fair number of resolutions left over from the last meeting. Awarding the hydrant replacement contract. We did an RFP and got one proposal back. So I will entertain a motion to award the hydrant replacement contract for up to $37,600 contingent upon engineer and attorney review of proposal.
So,
Discussion?
What was the total amount, you said?
37,600.
Did we get the rest of the week?
I was under the impression that our purchasing policy required that if we were over $30,000, we had to engage in the formal bidding procedure as required by the New York State law. Was it 30 or 40 or?
35. Didn't we do the formal bidding process here? Well, this was the informal one. All right, so up to 35,000 then.
Is that our purchasing policy 35?
That's the state.
I'm sorry?
That's the state limit.
That's the state limit?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll have to see whether our bidder will be willing to do this for $1 or less than that amount.
Yes. So 34,999.
I'll amend the resolution if that's what we need to do. 34,999.
Okay. Discussion?
Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
Karen?
Yes. Next was the mixer, and John, did you want to talk a little bit about the mixer and the aeration timer?
Well, the aeration
Possibility.
timer is pretty new to me. I just spoke with Mike today on that, and it was brief.
I can talk about that.
The mixer went down, and it went down right towards the end of April, somewhere in there. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head. So it was before we took our test. That I know. What it did is it just the motor seized in it. So the new one got delivered today. And it's going to be installed. I'm not sure the time frame. I'm assuming it's going to be soon. So the mixer, if you don't know, I think everybody knows the mixer just sits on the bottom of the tank and it takes in the water and shoots the water out and keeps the water continuously moving, so there's no dead spots or anything of that sort. So it failed. I don't know if that had anything to do with the slightly higher results, I don't know, but it did fail. It's about a week or so before we took our test.
And it is under warranty, so the hardware is replaced. However, labor is not included. So I talked to Mike today, and he said it would be less than $4,000 was the ballpark. So I'll entertain a motion to authorize work to replace the mixer, subject to engineer's review of the quote.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And the timer control, one of the things in Mike's note that I sent around to you was the aerator would show good removal of THMs, but there was a slight increase in haloacetic acids. And working with the manufacturer on potential solutions. One of them is a timer, a repeat cycle timer to the control panel. Preliminary indication is that adding a timer could be less than $1,000. So, as Mike said, it should be less than $1,000. Entertain a motion to authorize work to add timer controls to the spray aeration system, subject to feedback from IXOM, who's the manufacturer, and also subject to engineer's review of the quote.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, discussion?
So what he's saying is maybe there's a little too much aeration.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we'll bring one down and possibly raise it a little
Yeah,
bit.
So,
Is any of that possibly a result of, because it went up before the test?
Is
So
it-
could any of that have caused, do we need to wait for another test before we see if we need to do this, is my only question.
I don't, the aeration system is supposed to move water as well. Does it move it as, I think with the combined, it's definitely better. And the thing with the mixer is like having another tool in your toolbox. Because what that does is your chlorine comes in, we have a residual, and we bump it up just a little bit. And I've been trying to reduce our chlorine a little bit, but it fluctuates up and down a little bit. You adjust it every day to try to keep it in line. And by having that mixer in there, it makes it all the same residual. You see what I'm saying? So when I'm testing it down there, I'm not getting hot spots. Where like one day it's this, and then I got another shot and it's this. And it levels everything out. So if I have a 0.80 one day and a 1.10 the other day, it'll average because it'll all be mixed together. And it just helps level everything out and smooth the system. So I definitely recommend having that mixer on board.
But do we need the timer now?
The timer, that is, I think so, from what Mike is saying, and Gary, you talked to him too, was the timer might actually help bring down nucleic acids.
Yes.
Because they were saying something, I didn't talk to him much, but too much aeration could be good for one and bad for the other, is from what my understanding. Is that how you understood it?
Yeah.
it's a fairly inexpensive tool to put in the toolbox.
Yes.
Yeah,
Our cost $400.
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. The other thing was the GPS unit and the terrace sink and terrace sync software and the Trimble handheld unit. I think that will be an awesome addition to the village.
And I think you discussed this last time.
We did, but now we just,
I'm sorry, what's it for?
it's for mapping, all the valves, that you can never find, water valves. You go, you mark them, and you have a map made of it, so.
Would you like to borrow my Garmin?
You can find them in winter.
No, I have a Garmin too, but no, this does a lot more than that.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought we approved that.
No, because you had just gotten the information. I wanted to give you a couple of weeks to take a look at it. And so
You like it?
it's awesome. Are you kidding me? It's a gadget. I love gadgets.
true.
Especially in winter, I think John will like it when he's got to dig up a valve.
Yeah, I think in the future, or even now, once it's done, as I talked to the engineer, what they'd like to do is put together a big map so that it's hung right on the wall and say, I wanted to go to Gary's house. There would be a number there, and that would represent his house. You punch it in, you go over it, and it takes you right to it, from my understanding. So I'm not excited about doing all the work, but it's a good thing to have.
Where was that? Entertain a motion to authorize a procurement of GPS equipment for the water inventory system contingent on GPS approval. And that was in the amount of $87.48.
So much.
$9,000.
Discussion?
Did I hear that right? What?
It's
Does it
high-tech.
come with its own software package?
It does. TerraSync, it's called.
Yes.
Discussion? Okay. Yes. And the last leftover business is engineering amendment number 6. It was increasing the, where is it? Lamont from, there's a currently authorized budget of $109,000 and 109,900 has been exhausted. This amendment number 6 is necessary to allow our work to continue. We propose that our recent and upcoming work be authorized in a $20,000 increment. This $20,000 will also include additional disinfection byproduct testing. So what you had from the last meeting was a $18,000 increment, but it's amending it to $20,000, and that will wrap in the extra DBP testing. And so we'll increase the authorized budget to $129,900. So I'll entertain a motion to authorize signing engineering amendment number 6 in the amount of $129,900 to complete the project. That was it. Short and sweet. Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
Yes. Tom, for everyone update.
This is not nearly as complicated as AB3, but it's RV1. We've had 2 meetings. The last meeting, I'm trying to focus on one particular issue from meeting so we don't get spread out and globalized. What we did was we went through, we had full house, 7 people on the committee, everybody was there. We've also added Fred Severs as part of one of those 7, who's in RV1. So that's a good add because he's a big player in the RV1 zone. And what we did is we went through the permitted uses and the special permitted uses. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but we eliminated the ones we felt were dated, inappropriate for RV1. Things like boarding houses and stuff like that. And so we've got a rough draft of what remains. And our next meeting, we're going to start looking at the residential and of all these things that we think should stay in RV1, we'll start going through them one by one, and we'll start with the housing and residential, see what kind of residential units we want. The committee wants, I should say, in RV1. then we'll continue on from there. So, I'd like to just keep momentum going. And it seems like the committee so far is willing. So I'll just keep you guys updated, and if there's anything anybody wants to know about it, just either email me, call me, or whatever. That's it.
Okay. Quickly, under new business, I wanted to get a head start on a couple things. Budget transfers at the end of each year. No, budget transfer, colon. At the end of each year, there are some funds left unspent for a variety of reasons in funds. I'd like to transfer some of these leftover funds into the same account in this budget year. For example, garage building maintenance, stormwater contractual had 21,000 left over because we didn't do projects. So I just want to move it into this
Put them
year's
all back
budget.
where-
Put them back in there.
Roll them over.
Yeah, roll them over. Thank you. That's what I should have said. Tree maintenance was a big one. We had taken 20,000 from UFB, and a lot of those bills haven't come in yet. So Donovan takes them down as they have time, and we don't get the bills for. So I was surprised to see that there was that much left in.
Well, I think we were also going to add things, which we haven't,
Add things.
add trees. I think that we put some extra funding in there saying that we wanted to.
Yeah, that would be under conservation.
Oh, okay, so it's
Take
not.
3,900, right.
So it wasn't the
I
tree
get it.
maintenance.
Actually, I guess it could, now that I think of it. We did change it. But either way, I mean, the money was there at the end of the year, and so I'd like to move it into the same fund for this year to pump them up. So I will entertain a motion to move.
I saw that list that was about half a dozen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Can we do them all at once?
That'd be fine with me.
I mean, unless you want to read it, I'll just make the motion that we roll over those funds in those various accounts.
For garage,
As noted.
garage building maintenance,
Yep.
stormwater contractual, conservation, celebrations, tree maintenance, and road construction. For the indicated
I'll make
amounts.
that resolution.
Second.
Discussion? Discussion?
You give me a list.
It was on what I emailed you on my agenda.
The email, started. So just educational, couple questions, just so I understand. Do we typically, does the village typically do this every year, roll them back? into
Normally what
different
happens
accounts?
is, no, normally it goes into the
Fine.
UFB, the unallocated fund balance or unused fund balance. And then if we need more, we transfer from UFB into the accounts. I know we have needs in these particular areas, so I'd just like to get ahead,
Kind of preempt the.
preempt.
Well, I figured some of the monies, like celebrations, didn't get spent because of COVID, so
Right.
it makes sense to leave it. I guess, I was trying to find it in this volume, this trial balance, what is our current applied fund balance? We didn't cut ourselves short if we
No.
don't have.
No, we're in good shape with our fund balance.
Okay, those were my questions.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes, Gary?
Yes. Correspondence?
Yes. We got a nice donation for, let's see, dear Bill Ryan, hope this finds you well and satisfied and encloses a donation for $350 for maintenance and repair of the tracker organ to honor the memory of Edmund Van Dissing and Mark Walter, two of the finest and dearest and most generous people I ever knew. Warm regards, Sharon Wesley. And Bill did not know who that is.
Well,
Leslie,
she
yes.
used to live in the village.
Sharon Wesley?
I'm pretty sure that's who she used to
How
live.
much more money was, which is gonna too.
Yeah.
How much was it?
$350?
Very nice.
Do we have an address to send her a thank you?
Where's she live now?
Albany?
Approval of minutes.
We only have one second.
Two.
April 21st and May 5th.
I don't have any objections to them. We're doing both at once. Make a motion.
What are we voting?
The minutes.
I like to know the way they are.
So
As
vote
we
yes.
done it.
I'll vote yes.
And Tina can't vote, so it's good.
Yes.
Okay.
Approval of abstract.
Tina doing her due diligence, knowing that they, first and second page of this always look different, so we just wanted to. We thought this was 1500, this is 2550, just seems, we don't know. Quantities are different as well. One, and then the other ones are threes and fours. They just seem different than each other.
It's already, oh, it's four, quantity 4, and this was quantity 1, so she wrote it wrong. So again, this will be correct, because it's, we have, we need to go to Microsoft, whatever the next experience was.
3 of this.
I'm just saying, you've already paid it, they're gonna send you a balance due notice.
I don't know, do you want to work on that a little?
You'll, hold it for Jess.
The only question I have on the options is that, just an explanation, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation why it costs $1,700 or $1,400 to clean your. $1,500 to clean your floors.
It was 2,500 last year, wasn't it?
No,
15.
Was this a one, or just a one clean?
to start the season, they have to do all of the windows, they have to, it's more than maintenance, it's like.
I understand.
It's to open.
But they only charge 7
I don't
hours
know why
before.
it's 7, because I know they were 2.
It seems
I
like-
didn't read it.
Yeah, that seems like somebody's getting $100 an hour.
So we're gonna adjust that,
I'm gonna speak with the.
Just speak with them.
I'll
Yeah,
find
yeah,
out.
that's-
because, yeah, I think the bill just didn't reflect
It's
the.
just, it's odd.
It does. And you want to, are we supposed to, do anything with the abstracts?
Right, we have to do that.
With the approval.
Right,
I move we approve the abstract for June, in the amount of $39,259.90.
second.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Village Attorney, any words of wisdom?
No.
Village Mayor has no words of wisdom. Trustees?
No wisdom for me.
No, sir.
Public comment? Still awake?
I would comment that the Zoom link is just a drop ball. I tried to, you can't see or hear anything, so kind of pointless.
Well, I'm recording, so maybe.
Okay, well, just saying.
It's just, we said it would be up there, and it's up there.
Just noting.
Are you, you can see me?
Yeah, I'm like,
See me?
No,
but when I was home, I couldn't see or hear anything, and that's why I was running over. So, not really.
No.
Yeah.
Public comment, no executive session. Now I will gladly entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh. Yes, that's adjourned.
Aye. Thank you all for your patience. Thank you.